Encountering a probe hidden inside a comet, estimated at no less than 87 million years old. It turns out to be an archive or a library record, zapping the ship using the holodeck, the transporter, the replicator technology to produce copies of ancient artifacts, steadily transforming environmentally the entire ship into a long dead ancient city of a long dead, forgotten, mostly civilization. This is 1994, Star Trek The Next Generation, the episode Masks. Masaka is waking. There is possibly nothing more quintessentially Star Trek than when they touch on archaeology. Now that may sound odd. Any of those weird time travel shows where the Enterprise or the Voyager crew or even the Defiant go back in time. Anytime they do something really weird like the original series encountering an alien version of Abraham Lincoln and other people from Terran and Vulcan history, just solving your generic extraterrestrial, archaeological sort of mysteries, classic episodes like The Chase. This is really Star Trek at its finest, because we think of Star Trek, of course, as exploring strange new worlds. But of course, we know that primarily it is about exploring the human condition, our past, our present, and projecting to us a future that is optimistic, at least one of the best of possible outcomes, where we have learned to work together to explore the cosmos, found other allies, other friends, exploring and learning. But always within Star Trek, this is deeply rooted in the past. It is deeply rooted in the present. It is not rooted in the present in some trivialized way that the fake Kurtzman Trek does, with rancid, rabid political lectures and appearances by politicians right in the show. It is not rooted in the past in some sort of communist erasure, monument destroying sort of rooting, but rather the lessons we've learned through the shared struggle of humanity, even against one another, into the present, and projecting far out an optimism, not something so trivial as who you voted for dog catcher in Biloxi, Mississippi. Oh my God, you're a hate criminal. But a future based on principles and ideals projected out, not petty parochial arguments now about which or another policy most reflects this thing we dream of 500 years into the future. But anytime that Star Trek is dealing with the past, the present, and the future, anytime it is doing that, though we might get more sci-fi enjoyment out of the Strange New Worlds ones, those visits to alien cultures that are fascinating, nevertheless, it is most quintessentially Star Trek when it is exploring humanity and how humanity has grown, will grow, can grow, and the potentialities thereof. This episode, Masks, is an incredible episode. There's not a lot of action in it. It's very cerebral, but it's very interesting stuff. Encountering this millions of years old probe, first thinking it's a comet, trying to blast away the outer layer, get a better look at it, and it turns out to be this archive drifting in space. The long dead civilization from the long dead D'Arcy system sent this out apparently to preserve some record of their culture. It begins manifesting, especially inside data, having planted an outside program like a virus into the ship's computer and into Mr. Data. It begins manifesting elements of its culture and, above all, its theology. Personally, I think this is what is the most interesting about this episode. These people were obviously advanced enough for some form of space travel. Even if they didn't have manned space travel, that would be hard to believe, because the detail in which they were able to put into this probe, to be able to anticipate alien technologies, to be able to adapt and to plant this program into those technologies, to drift out there that long and be functional, it seems almost impossible that they were not, at the very least, a 21st or maybe 22nd century level technology like Earth in Star Trek before this time. They had to be at least at that level in order to be able to produce this, but even if not, what is really fascinating is the desire to preserve their culture and what they chose to preserve. Presumably, everything in the archive is Well, it's an archive. Presumably it has everything from a detailed chronicle of their history, some sort of version of the gold record we send into space with a message and a signal and some music, all the way down to grandma or Red Lobster's cheddar biscuit recipe. But what gets projected into the computer, this first contact effort, this thing that above all they wanted to be received electronically by an alien culture, is first their theology, a detailed description of their mythos and their religion, which, not surprisingly, like ancient cultures, at least all over Earth, is based around the sun and the moon cycle as a basic cosmic way that you would tell time on any planet and therefore design any calendar on any planet. Whatever the language, whatever the culture, we use math to try to find or communicate with possible ETs. It just makes sense that as a cultural exchange, what they sent out was this mythos that is deeply rooted, certainly in all of whatever the ancient cultures were that became their planet-wide culture. But what they anticipate is common for intelligent entities wherever they happen to live. Wherever there is a life cycle on a planet, there's going to be a planetary cycle. Even if you are life living on a moon like a moon of Jupiter, nevertheless, you're going to recognize the movement of astral bodies and of where you get your light source. And so we get the story of Musaka, the great queen, the queen empress of the sun, who starves and burns and destroys, but also brings life, being forever chased by the moon. I'm going to blank on his name. Forever being chased by her on-again, off-again lover, Korgon, the symbol of the moon that is on the back of all the artifacts. There's a lot of other characters that manifest, children, old men, everybody within this city, whether they are all real historical people preserved in the archive by memory, or part of the greater mythos, like the Greco-Roman myths, part of their epic story in regard to Musaka and Korgon, is not entirely clear. But in the end, after the ship is saved and delivered from all the weird transformations that threaten its stability, nevertheless, the Enterprise is able to leave with much of the information of the archive, being able to preserve this long-dead, forgotten culture. And again, this is quintessentially Star Trek. It's a great episode. It is about the future. It is about the past. It is about the present. It is about the value of what is important. What are your values as a culture? What do you really care about? What are your ideals, your principles? What these people from the long dead to Arcee system chose to preserve was their religion, first, foremost, and above all.